All right, hello everybody. Welcome to episode 48 of the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. Clark and Jeremy Palmer here with you. Make sure you like, subscribe, thumbs up, make some comments. Clark, how's it going?
Good. So, 40, you said 49?
48.
48. So episode XXXXV3.
I
Three
think it's
eyes.
easier to just do LII.
Oh, is it 40? Oh, that's right. They do that with the L. Okay.
Count back
Right,
from
right,
50.
Right, and then 50 becomes LV. Right, okay.
Yeah, I apologize. Episode 47 is not on YouTube yet.
That's my fault.
But we had some technical difficulties, so we're gonna take care of that. So you're gonna get a double dose. You're gonna get stuff we had from last week and stuff we had from this week. So listen,
Right.
we make up for it. So the first, I'll let you go. Clark had the first topic that you want to talk about. Aaron Rodgers
yes.
was on the Joe Rogan podcast.
That's right. So, first of all, just my initial reaction, I'm scrolling through YouTube and I see, oh shit, Aaron Rodgers was on Joe Rogan's podcast. Not that I'm all that surprised, but I'm just thinking, oh, the sports media is going to love this on Monday. So, look, I've only listened to a little bit of it. The problem with Joe Rogan's podcast is they're freaking 3 hours long. I'll be honest with you. I've listened to a bunch of his podcasts, but I've probably only listened to an entire podcast of his like 3 or 4 times. I'll listen to maybe an hour or so, and then it's just kind of like, all right, because he'll have these like 2 hour, 3 hour long sprawling conversations about all kinds of stuff, and it just gets kind of like, all right, I got other stuff to listen to, but anyway, so I did find it interesting. I'm going to listen to more of it, this week. Because it is just interesting. Like, when else do you get an active NFL player on a major podcast like that? And just not just an active NFL player. He's a 2-time MVP. Just won the MVP last year, and obviously a guy who's been involved in, let's say, some controversy the past couple seasons, I guess.
Right.
But anyway, I listened to probably the first half hour of it, and I also watched some clips on YouTube. And he talked about Joe Rogan brought up the whole thing with the vaccine where Aaron Rodgers wasn't vaccinated, and he said, I'm immunized. And then later on they found out that he actually wasn't vaccinated, so he had to miss the game last year, which they lost against the Chiefs, and all that sort of controversy. And look, I don't think we want to rehash all that. We did get into that at the time. But, I will, in Aaron Rodgers' defense, I will say some things where I'm like, he did raise some good points. He's like, well, they were saying that he shouldn't, he was doing the press conferences after games without a mask on while all the other reporters had masks on and they were vaccinated and they were 30 feet away from where he was standing answering questions. And so people were getting upset about that. It's like, that seems a little ridiculous. Also, he was being tested. If you're unvaccinated, he was being tested every day. And so if he tested positive, then he wouldn't have been around anybody. So, that just seemed kind of, and he was talking about how kind of ridiculous some of the protocols people were going through. And yeah, he's right. Like, if you look back at some of these things, it's kind of like, what the hell were we thinking? It just seemed very fear-based and just sort of, well, they're saying do this, and it's like, okay, but does that make sense? Is that really accomplishing anything? Is this just, COVID theater? And again, I'm a person who got vaccinated. I got a vaccine. I got 2 shots of Pfizer, and I got the booster shot. I got 1 booster shot. I haven't gotten the second one. But, yeah, I thought he made some decent points. Again, he was talking about he was allergic to something that was in the vaccine, and then he didn't want to take Johnson & Johnson because it was pulled because of blood clots. But if you actually look at that more closely, it was pulled because of like 6 people getting blood clots, and they were all fine. I think none of them died. And it was, in fact, when Johnson & Johnson pulled it because of that, there was a lot of people saying, what are you doing? You're just scaring people away. But, again, I didn't really have a problem with what any of the players decided to do about that. It's your body. You decide what you're going to do. I wasn't really like, And at the time we talked about this, I raised the point that I felt like some writers and media people were saying that we're acting like Aaron Rodgers was putting other people at risk because he wasn't vaccinated. And I'm just like, most of the other people he's playing with are vaccinated. They're also NFL players who are in tremendous shape. So, and they're playing outside. So I don't really see what the...
Yeah, on that issue, I think this is the media taking it out on Aaron Rodgers because they didn't ask a follow-up question to the immunized thing.
Right.
And if they had done their homework at all, they would have easily been able to figure out he wasn't vaccinated.
The podcast he was talking about, he had to wear a particular wristband because he was unvaccinated. It's like he was wearing that. He was getting tested. There's a different standard for getting tested if you're vaccinated versus unvaccinated, and he was following that standard. And look, we can get into the other stuff he said. He took some homeopathic treatment options for that. I don't really know exactly what he did, and look, that's up to him. He did what he wanted. I don't really care. But it just kind of, it does get a little annoying, particularly at this point. Like, Novak Djokovic can't play in the U.S. Open, if I'm not mistaken. And it's like, at this point, he can't play? And again, he said some stuff about the vaccine. I'm like, what are you even talking about? But, dude, it's his body. Who gives a shit? He can do whatever the hell he wants, And I guess just the main point that I wanted to kind of raise was that, although Aaron Rodgers made some decent points, but again, it's like with him and Kyrie Irving, it's kind of like, they're the wrong messengers, maybe, because I feel like they've, for maybe some good points that they've raised, they've also done stuff where it just makes people not trust them or not like them. And then it diminishes the message that they might be, it diminishes some of the good points that they might be making.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. And listen, I don't care whether you get vaccinated or not. Like, that's up to you. Like, I don't really, we can get into, well, the vaccines are bad, the vaccines are good, whatever your opinion is on that, that's fine. The bottom line is the NFL made a decision. This is how they were going to handle it. Aaron Rodgers made a choice. Okay. He missed a game because of that choice. Did that game really cost them anything? No. So
there were a lot of other players who didn't get vaccinated. Now, most of them did. Like Lamar Jackson didn't get vaccinated. And I believe did he miss a game last year, or was it the year before?
Yeah, he did. He got COVID. He got COVID a few times.
Yeah. So no, he didn't get the backlash that Aaron Rodgers did. I don't make of that what you will. I don't know.
Yeah, him, but Carson Wentz, Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, exactly. So and I just it's kind of And the Kyrie Irving thing, like we went over that. I mean, I just thought it became ridiculous because he was able to be a spectator in the arena, but he couldn't play. And it was like, what? Like, that's the thing. It's like, what the hell are we doing here, guys? Like, really? Come on.
Yeah, both two things can be true at the same time, right? It can be, that we want to keep everybody safe, yes, but some of these rules were ridiculous. Do I think it's safe to get vaccinated? Sure. Do I think people should do? Yeah, I would. I did it, but I'm not going to require everybody to do it. And the way that New York and California especially, the way that they handled it was ridiculous. Andrew Wiggins played for the Warriors. He had to get vaccinated or he wouldn't have been able to play in any home games.
Yeah.
So it's some of these rules were a bit ridiculous. Aaron Rodgers is right about that, but that doesn't mean that you're just you get to do whatever the hell you want either. It doesn't mean that I don't like these rules, therefore. And the allergy thing, I've read up on the propylene glycol allergy. I'm not sure that's legit, but whatever.
You're not convinced. Okay.
He says it is. Yeah. Whatever. I don't know that I really buy it, but regardless, I think that I don't think Aaron Rodgers is a bad guy. I think the problem is this vaccine thing is so polarizing that we're just going to kill everybody who doesn't do it. And you're creating, like they said this on the podcast, that you're creating more of the problem. We're in this pandemic and you're stopping us from fixing it. And it's like, that's not.
And that's one of the false. That's one of the things that was promoted. It was like, well, you're it's like you're stopping us from getting out of this because you're not getting vaccinated, or you're causing this to spread more because and it's like guys, when you really look at that, and then you look at some of the stuff that the public health people sort of decided not to say at different times, and it's like, could you people have just been honest about some? Again, that's a whole other thing. I don't necessarily want to get back into it. I guess we're just bringing it up because he was on that podcast. But the last thing I just wanted to point out was, Joe Rogan gets, I think, in some cases unfairly maligned by a lot of people who literally don't listen to his podcast. Now, for a few years there, I listened to it a lot. I haven't really listened to it. I mean, to be honest, other than seeing clips on YouTube, listening to the Aaron Rodgers one was the first time I'd really downloaded his podcast and listened to it in quite a while. But I've listened to a fair number of them. And the thing is, a lot of people criticize him and they don't really listen to his podcast. And it's like, you guys need to understand, most of his guests are like comedians. Joe Rogan's a stand-up comedian. He has other comedians on there, and they just goof around for 2 or 3 hours. And they talk about a wide range of stuff and, conspiracy theories and all kinds of weird stuff, and you can make of it what you will. He'll bring on other interesting people to talk about, a wide variety of subjects, and they'll just have a really long conversation. It's pretty interesting to listen to, Now, sometimes he will have on people, especially during COVID, maybe he, more so than what he used to do, he would have, a lot of, I don't know what you would call them, newsmakers or people having to do with that. And, he had some people on there that said some things that I kind of disagreed with, or people that said things I'm like, why are you having this guy on your show? Like, maybe you should vet these people a little more carefully. But just don't listen to it, But don't come out and say, like, this guy's the bane of our existence and he's just destroying our culture. And it's like, he's not Alex Jones. Alex Jones for years was saying that the Sandy Hook thing was a false flag attack. Now he got a jury award for, he's going to have to pay like $45 million to the families because he kept saying it was a false flag thing. He said all this horrible stuff. Joe Rogan's not that, okay? You can not like some of his podcasts. You don't even have to listen to him. But just slow down, It's a much more nuanced thing. And again, like I said, he's had people on there that I'm like, why are you having this idiot on there? But it's his fucking podcast. He can do whatever the hell he wants.
Right. It would be no different than taking a 30-second clip from our podcast and then, running with it and saying, well, he's saying this is what we should do. So, is he right about this? Is he wrong about this? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Like, it blows my mind when all of these doctors wrote this letter to Spotify that they wanted Joe Rogan censored or taken off the air or fired or whatever it was because he said some things on a show that were untrue. And I'm like, he talks for 3 hours. Yeah, they probably say some stuff that's untrue. Why are you going to Joe Rogan as your source for how to deal with stuff?
Well,
I don't know.
The thing is,
I don't know what to tell you.
The thing is, people are they're saying, well, so many millions of people listen to him, and it's like, okay, why do you think that many millions of people listen to him? Okay, when if it's that many millions of people, there's got to be a wide variety of reasons that they're listening to him. Maybe it's because they don't trust the mainstream media. Maybe because they don't trust the public health authorities because they've screwed so much stuff up over the last several decades. So people have lost, and when you look at surveys and stuff, people have lost trust. So yeah, they're going to go to different places. And now the media landscape is so fractured and there's so many different sources. People can go to so many different places for things. So instead of just going, oh, well, this is terrible, it's like, well, why? What role did the media can criticize it, but it's like, well, what role did you play in people not wanting to watch you anymore? Like, anyway, we could get into a whole sidetrack thing with that, but I'm going to listen to more of the podcasts. I think it's kind of interesting.
Listen, I like, there's a lot of athletes that I find really interesting. Aaron Rodgers has good stories. I think he's really open about talking about it. He doesn't try to shy away from it or try to say things that he thinks people want to hear. He tells you what's going on with him, which I think is good. I think athletes should be authentic, but also saying, but where he says, I was immunized, right? And then he says, I didn't lie about that. Okay.
Yeah,
we could get into, semantics about it, but dude, you misrepresented the truth. Don't act like you didn't do it. You didn't play any part in it. That's nonsense. Now, I do blame the media 100% because it's their fault. They're the ones that screwed this up. They didn't ask a follow-up question. That's not Aaron Rodgers' fault. Okay. And I really believe that's part of the reason why the media all came out against him.
Yes.
Because all of the sports media was mad that he, kind of stuck it to him. And, if you know Aaron Rodgers, he loves to do that.
Yeah.
So,
right.
But,
and this just popped into my head. One of the unfortunate things is he used to go on Dan Le Batard's podcast a lot, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then the whole COVID thing happened and he's kind of persona not, and to me, that's unfortunate. It's like when they had Dan Le Batard, they had Michelle Tafoya on, and they just basically, it was a horrible interview. They just kept attacking. It's like, here's the thing. You could have Aaron Rodgers on there and you could challenge him on some of these things in a way that would be entertaining, in a way that would be a good conversation. But one of the problems in our culture now that we've lost the ability to do that. If they brought him on there, they would just keep attacking him, with all these different things, some of which might be, over the top or untrue or just mischaracterizations of things, and it would just be a waste of time. But the thing is, people are going to criticize him for being on Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan may not be challenging him on certain things. Well, other places could have him on and challenge him, and it could actually be good if there wasn't so much animosity about all this stuff.
Right. And but Joe Rogan's not a journalist. Okay? It's not his job to try to sort through and make sure everything is correct, okay? If you're going to Joe Rogan and Aaron Rodgers as your credible sources on what you're going to do with your life, you need to seek help. Okay? These are not, I'm sorry. I like both guys. I'm not listening to them on what to do in any situation.
Well, yeah, and it's like a lot of these podcasts, of course, on Rogan and a lot of these other podcasts, they're doing all these ad reads for these variety of different products. And I don't know about you, some of the times I've actually tried some of these products. It's kind of like when I see something on Shark Tank, I've looked it up, and I even bought a belt that was advertised on there. But the thing is, if I do that, and then I have some sort of problem with it, that's on me because I chose to buy the thing. Okay? So you can choose to do whatever the hell you want with the information that you hear. Okay? Anyway.
Okay. So yeah, we'll move on. We'll move on from that. It's enough fun for one day.
Yeah.
The thing that I wanted to talk about, NFL wise, is, Jimmy Garoppolo is still on the 49ers. And apparently he is kind of practicing off to the side, like he's not really running the offense. He's not playing with the first team. He's kind of doing his own thing. And, he was out for a while because of his, I think his shoulder injury.
Yeah.
So, I think he's only been kind of practicing for about a month. And it's a topic. It seems to be a topic on every show. Like, why hasn't someone picked up Jimmy Garoppolo yet? What's going on? And then it becomes everybody's defending him. Well, but he wins games. And it's funny. It's a defense that Jimmy Garoppolo gets to use, but nobody else seems to use. I don't quite get it. Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins don't get that kind of credit.
Yeah.
They win games. They don't get that credit. But for some reason, Jimmy Garoppolo is like the chosen son of every television show. It's unjust what he's doing, getting paid $25 million to be a backup.
Look, he's an attractive man. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. Maybe he's just, maybe there's a...
Maybe. But, I stated when the offseason started, I was like, if I was San Francisco, I was like, I would just hang on to him. Because you don't know what you're going to get with Trey Lance. He's got 1 year left. You're not really going to get anything for him. Right. It's really hard. First of all, it's really hard for teams to get him because they have to fit him in the cap, and he's making $25 million. It's really hard to do. And so, and Jimmy Garoppolo can choose not to restructure his contract, which makes it really difficult for you to do anything. So at this point, it's like, what am I going to get, a 6th round pick for him? It's like, nah, just hang on to him. It's kind of, the whole thing is kind of dumb. Why hasn't he been picked up yet? Well, he hasn't been picked up yet because he's not awesome. I like Jimmy Garoppolo. He's good, but nobody's going, this guy's going to take us to the promised land.
Baker Mayfield got picked up because he restructured his contract, essentially. I mean, Cleveland had to pay some of it, and then he had to take – didn't he have to take a little less?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why, that's why they took Baker Mayfield, not necessarily because Baker Mayfield is, miles, above Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback.
Right.
They're probably.
Yeah, they're only having to pay
Baker.
Baker.
They're kind of similar. I mean, to be honest.
Yeah, and they're only having to pay Baker Mayfield $4 million.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's why. So it's like it's really not complicated, and I don't believe that Jimmy Garoppolo is getting like screwed here. I think he'll be just fine. And if Trey Lance doesn't work out, he can jump right in there and play quarterback for them. I also think they're going to look. They're probably looking for the right deal. And they're going to wait to see, well, some quarterback might get injured and then some team might want him.
Right.
I get it. But the fact that he's been available all this time and nobody's like, I'll give you a second round pick for him. Nobody's doing that. It tells you all you need to know. I don't necessarily agree with the theory all the time that, well, the market will decide it. I don't necessarily think that's universal. But in this case, like, It's telling you all you need to know about what everyone thinks of Jimmy Garoppolo. No one wants to give up a low draft pick to get him.
Yeah,
I don't know what to tell you. And if I'm San Francisco, I get they don't want to just give him to Seattle or whatever, even though I wouldn't care about that. They don't want to just throw him out there somewhere. But I think he probably ends up on another team. But this isn't earth shattering. This isn't.
Yeah,
I mean,
just think about it this way, okay? How many years has he been in the league now?
Oh, I think he was drafted in like 2012, I want to say.
Okay. When did he get traded?
Well, that was
16.
after the year Brady got suspended, right?
Yeah. That was like 16. Okay, so you got to figure 7, 8 years at least. And then he's got, he tore his ACL, right?
Okay, so no, he was drafted in 2014. So he played on the Patriots until 2017, and then he was traded in 17.
Okay. All right, yeah, and then he went to San Francisco, and then he tore his ACL.
Right?
Like the following year. Okay, and then he's had a variety of injuries since then. He's just coming off shoulder surgery.
Right.
He's had two good seasons. He had the one season where they went to the Super Bowl and almost won, and then they had last year. Is he going to get better? I mean, no. Exactly. He's not really going to get better. So, and he's had injuries, and as he gets older, he's probably going to continue to have injuries. That's usually how that goes. So, you could argue that San Francisco got the best that Jimmy Garoppolo has. San Francisco got that out of him already.
Yep.
So, yeah, again, it's like he wins games. So what? He wins games in the absolute right situation. But
yeah, that's another point. It's another point I wanted to bring up. Yeah, he wins games when you put everything else around him perfectly. Yeah. When you give him one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, a great running game, good wide receiver, good tight end, really good offensive play caller, and a good defense. When you give him all of that stuff, okay, great, he can win games. Yeah, a lot of guys can do that.
Dak Prescott can do that. He's not going to do that this year, though, but he can do that.
Right. Dak Prescott can do that. Kirk Cousins can do that. Derek Carr can do that. There's a lot of quarterbacks that can do that, but that doesn't mean...
Look, if the offensive line for the Dolphins plays well this year, Tua's probably going to have a good year. And I'm not a Tua guy, but he's probably going to have a good year. I mean, so, there's a lot of guys you could say that about.
Yeah, so I think the consternation about it is just annoying. It's just like people like...
Well, and that's the thing. Like I was, you pointed this out earlier this week, and I was like, well, I guess there's nothing to talk about. And it's like, well, there's plenty of stuff to talk about. It's like, yeah, you're right. There is plenty of stuff to talk about. But for whatever reason, people just like talking about it. And it's just like, this is really a lame topic. I mean, same thing with Baker Mayfield. Like, I really don't care. Like, I don't, they're not making the playoffs this year. Like, I don't really, it's not really, I mean, I will say this, good for him. I mean, he got booted out of Cleveland, and now he's gone somewhere. He earned the starting job, and barring injury, he's probably going to start every game this year. I don't think he's going to have a great year because that team is, their offensive line's not very good, and they got a bunch of problems, and Matt Rule's probably going to end up getting fired. So.
Yeah. So we'll have more NFL stuff. We're going to do our NFL preview on the next episode. And so we'll have some idea. We'll make some we'll make some picks for you and give you some predictions and all of that good stuff next week. But in the meantime, this week we've got college football started. There were some games yesterday. Nobody in the top 25 yesterday.
Yeah, of course.
It was not, nothing spectacular, but college football is underway. By the way, just as confusing as college football is, yesterday was week 0, which makes absolutely no sense. I don't know what planet we're on with that week 0 stuff. It's absolutely insane. But anyway,
it's kind of like the play-in game in the NCAA tournament in men's basketball. Right. It's like, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah. So just say they're in.
Yeah.
But so I had a lot of college football thoughts. I did some research, and so I wrote down some. I just want to do it this way. I wrote down some questions, and we'll kind of go back and forth, and I'll give you my thoughts and all that stuff. So, my first question is, well, it's kind of two-parted. It's, can anyone beat Alabama, and will Georgia repeat? So
well, Georgia lost a bunch of guys to the NFL.
Yeah, so this is pretty amazing.
For me, that just seems like a foregone conclusion. They're not going to be nearly as good as they were last year.
Yeah, so I looked this up. It's really amazing. They had 15 guys drafted last year, which is, I think it's a record, and 8 guys on defense and 7 guys on offense, which is just, it's insane when you realize how good that team was. And by the way, they had to be that good, because without that defense, as crazy as it was, they wouldn't have been able to beat Alabama, because the defense really carried them basically the whole season, and then essentially held them into that championship game so they could win it. So, I mean, I think I don't think Georgia's going to repeat, although, going through schedules, like, I do think Georgia has a chance to go undefeated, because they're not playing, they're not playing Alabama in the regular season anyway. They would have to play them in the championship game. But they do. They're playing Oregon in the first game, but it's in Atlanta. So not on their home field, but pretty close to their home field. So I would imagine, and I definitely think they're better than Oregon. And then they play Auburn at home, and they play at Kentucky. So they don't have like really difficult games. So they could still, find a way to go undefeated. But I do think the offense is going to have to carry a bigger load this year, which is going to make it difficult. And so, but I think they're really good though. I mean, they have. And on offense, they have 2 tight ends that are probably going to be All-Americans. So I think they're going to be good. They're not going to be ridiculous like they were last year. And I would say Alabama's probably the favorite, but it's not. It's not going to be a cakewalk. I mean, they got to play Texas A&M, and they do have to play at Ole Miss. So I think. I would imagine.
Can they get into the SEC championship game?
Who?
Texas A&M.
Yeah, if Texas A&M beats them,
okay,
they're going to have to. But that's one of the games I'm really excited, probably most excited about.
That plus all the off-field stuff with Saban, saying you guys bought all your players.
Yeah, right. So that should be a really exciting game. But yeah, I think Alabama is going to be pretty tough to beat if they fix their offensive line, because that was the issue last year. The offensive line just didn't hold up in these games, and that's why they almost lost to LSU. They almost lost to Auburn because they just couldn't protect at all. And so I think if they fix their offensive line, yeah, they're probably going to win the whole thing. I think they're probably the strongest team. So my next question is, who's back? So every year, what?
Is Clemson back?
Yeah, that's the thing. Every year, it's always, I feel like there's a handful of teams. Everybody's like, "Oh, we're back." I think Texas, it's every single year, "We're back." It's like so. So my question is, who's back? And then I wrote down Clemson, Miami, USC, Texas. Who do
Clemson,
I mean?
They still won 10 games last year, so I would think that it seemed like they just had some issues with their quarterback, and he just needed more experience or something. I would think that they would be back because Miami, I still need to see it. Clemson, I've seen it very recently.
Yeah, I think Clemson is back. I think their defense is really good, and they got basically that whole thing back. The offense they're going to have to figure out. They have plenty of talent, and if the DJ, I'm just going to say DJ because I'm not going to try to say his last name. If he struggles, they have a guy behind him that they're probably going to put in. So Clemson is just they need to fix their offensive stuff, but that playing in the ACC, I mean. That they don't have a whole lot of tough games. They have to play Miami and they have to play NC State, but they get them both at home. So I think that that's probably Clemson. I think is going to be they won 10 games last year, so it's not like this is out of nowhere. But
I think that like Miami, even though they've got even though there's a transfer portal now, I just feel like if Miami's going to be back, then I would think we would start to see that next year. Because it'll take them, a little time to kind of get, even though the ACC is not that good.
Right. So, I think Miami is an interesting team this year. They have a quarterback who's going to get drafted in the NFL. They got the new coach who's really good with offensive line, so he should be able to make them tougher up front at minimum. But no, I don't think they're back. But I do think by the end of the season they may be pretty good. I feel the same way about USC. I think by the end of the season, USC will be a pretty good team. I was looking at, what they're doing with their team and what their roster's like, and basically USC has skill position guys. They have receivers and running backs, and they have pass rushers, and they have all of that stuff, but they don't have the guys up front, the offensive linemen, the defensive linemen that you need to compete with the Alabamas, the Ohio States, all that. But they could win the Pac. Like, it's not crazy to think they'll win the Pac-12. I think Utah's the best team in the Pac-12, but it's not crazy to think by the end of the season, they could be knocking on the door. But I don't think they're back.
Well, if you're a one-loss Pac-12 champion, you got a shot to get into the playoff, but it depends who you're up against, because then you're going to have to deal with like Bama and Clemson, and then we'll see what like say Oklahoma if they're really good again, so.
Yeah, and then, I think Texas, I have no idea. I don't know whether, that's just, every coach has tried that, it looks good for a couple of weeks. But, again, they're in the Big 12. You look at these teams with their schedules, and it's kind of like, all right. But Texas is playing Alabama in the first game, and I expect that to be a disastrous blowout. I don't think there's any way they keep up with them. So, yeah, I think Clemson's legit. They may be able to go to the playoff. Miami, USC, and Texas, probably not.
Right.
Okay, so and then I put, all right, who's going to surprise us this year? Who's your, what are some surprising teams out there? Now, you can come up with a lot of these by just looking at schedules, just because so many of these schedules are really bad. Like Purdue.
What about like Baylor?
Yeah,
I guess maybe that wouldn't be a surprise because they played pretty well the last few years. But.
Yeah, Baylor could definitely make the playoff. They got to play Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, but they could definitely make the playoff. But I looked at Purdue. They don't play Ohio State. They don't play Michigan. I think they play Wisconsin and Penn State. And that's it. Okay. So Purdue could end up in the Big Ten championship game basically playing no one. So, but I wrote down there were some other legitimate teams. I mean, I think Utah is really good. I realize that's not a surprise to anybody on the West Coast, but to people who follow college football kind of loosely, Utah's got a real chance to go undefeated. They have a better, like I said, I was talking about up front. Utah's the best team in the Pac-12 up front. Their offensive and defensive lines are better than everybody else. And you saw what happened last year. They blew out Oregon twice. So they're legit. And I don't know, I don't know that USC is good enough to beat them. So Utah has real shot. Another team nobody's, people are going to talk about now, but I think it's a little bit of a surprise is NC State. Playing in the ACC, they get their shot at Clemson, and that's really the only difficult game that they have. So if they win that game, you could be looking at trouble, and apparently their quarterback, throws it all over the yard. So, those were some, other than, surprise, other than teams we've already talked about. I don't know that, college football doesn't have a whole lot of surprises. So I don't know that there's going to be really a surprise team, especially not to make the playoff. I think there could be a surprise team that gets into a New Year's Six game.
But you know how people get, in the middle of the season, they just get, well, if this team goes undefeated, then there's going to be chaos. You know how that goes every year. It's always that way, and then things always work themselves out by the end of the year. But that's part of the fun of college football.
Yeah, so I don't think you're going to get two teams from the SEC this year. I think if it's Bama and Georgia and Bama beats them, I don't think they're going to put Georgia in. I don't think Georgia will have the same kind of resume that they had last year. And so I think that's kind of interesting. That opens up, because that's the way it's been lately is we get two SEC teams and then, whoever wins the Big Ten and then who's going to get the fourth spot. I think there's going to be some good competition for the third and fourth spots between, one of the Big 12 teams, Oklahoma State, Baylor, versus, Clemson or Utah. I think that could be pretty interesting. So I wrote down, what games are you looking forward to this year? So number one is Alabama, Texas A&M, obviously. I think that's on everybody's list. Yeah, a lot of reasons. I think that's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to Notre Dame and Clemson. Clemson has to go to Notre Dame.
Notre Dame has to play Ohio State too, right?
Right, in the first game.
Well, so if Notre Dame goes undefeated, then they'd get a pretty good shot. But, them going undefeated would be, I don't know.
Yeah, unlikely, because I don't think they're going to beat Ohio State. I think Ohio State, they have to go to Columbus. I think Ohio State beats them fairly easily. So I don't think there's any chance they go undefeated. But they still could have a pretty good team.
Right.
The other game, I wrote down Georgia and Oregon just because I want to see it. You don't get to see those two teams play each other that often. Do I think Georgia's a better team? Yeah, I do. But they're not what they were last year. They're not just, this thing, this beating the hell out of everybody and, giving up 8 points. That's not what's going on, but Georgia still has better players. So they still should win the game. But Do
you think there's going to start to be Colin Cowherd talks about this, but I haven't really heard it from a bunch of other places. Do you think there's going to start to be a push toward, hey guys, stop scheduling this crap out of conference stuff? Can we start the season with you guys playing real games? And maybe that only comes after they expand the playoff because people won't be so concerned about going undefeated or only having one loss. But yeah, it just kind of it's one of those things that's always irritated me. It's you start off the season, you're like, we're starting with these crappy games, and then it's the season ends and then you got to wait weeks to get to and you're kind of all this momentum and we got to wait 3 weeks till we get games, it's one of those things where it's guys, there's a missed opportunity here. Come on.
Yeah. As we talked about on the show before, they left a whole bunch of money, $450 million on the table by not expanding the playoff. And it's ridiculous. The fact that they haven't mandated, these teams play real games. And, Nick Saban says he wants to play 9 or 10 conference games, which I think would be fantastic. Think this is okay. So this is my schedule utopia. All right. The first game. All right, fine. You want to play Utah State or Cupcake U? Fine. I'm okay with it. You want to do it. What we should do though is put them all in week 0. Okay. The last weekend of August, everybody has to play their Cupcake game. Get it done. Get it out of the way. Okay. It's in August. From then on, you play one other out of conference game. Has to be a Power 5 team. And by the way, has to be a Power 5 team that made it to a bowl in the last season. Okay? You've got
Illinois State crap. No,
you've got to play a 6-win team. It's a Power 5 team that won at least, make whatever limit you want. To me, it should be they went to a bowl or they won 7 games or whatever it is. That should be it. And then you play 10 conference games. We're expanding the conferences like crazy. Why are we playing? We don't need to play all of these ridiculous out of conference games. You know,
Yeah.
then and just play 10 conference games. We'll give you 2 buys during the season so you can try to work around whatever you want to do. But that's what it should be. You know, I'm tired of this nonsense about, you know, whatever. And it's like, you don't need it, you know. And I get, all right, we got to, and it's like, I understand the argument. Well, we got to support all these FBS schools. Fine. You get 1 game. You get 1. That's it. That's all you get. You know?
Yeah.
And it's the first game. So you don't get to just, you know, work it into your schedule the way Alabama does, which is just absolute nonsense. They have a bye before the LSU game every year, and then they play the Citadel or Louisiana Monroe the week before they play Auburn. It's like, I mean, they've, you know, it's like, yes, Alabama's really good, but they've also manipulated the shit out of the schedule to make it completely useless. So anyway, we could go on forever about that. But I wrote the other 2 games I wrote down I want to see are Utah and USC, and then NC State and Clemson.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, I mean, those are, you know, big conference matchups. There's not, it's like, how sad is it, Clark? Every game I listed, except for Notre Dame, well, I listed Notre Dame Clemson, which is kind of a conference matchup because Notre Dame kind of plays the ACC primarily, but Oregon or Georgia, Oregon, that's the only out of conference game that I listed in the games I want to see. Like, that's disappointing. It really
Bama's
is.
playing Texas, but you know,
right? They're playing Texas, which is just. I mean, come on, you know, give me a break with Texas, you know, and then you know Notre Dame is playing Ohio State, which, you know, good for them, man. I mean, it's 2 top 5 teams playing each other the first week. That's awesome.
You know, you're actually playing somebody, yeah.
And then let's see, what did I write down here? I got is you know, who do I think is for real, right? Is Texas A&M for real? Is USC for real? I think Texas A&M will be really good. They still have to figure out. They kind of have to figure out the quarterback situation because the quarterback was injured last year. The backup beat Alabama last year, and they have a completely different, you know, situation. So I think Texas A&M will be really good. I know everybody wants to shit on them now because they had the great recruiting class, and everybody's like, it's nonsense. But it's, you know, I think they're legit. And then I basically just had a couple of schools I wanted to talk about. You know, I'm gonna go out on a limb on a few of these, but, you know, this is how I feel. I think Ohio State's gonna beat the hell out of Michigan. I think that was a really nice job beating Ohio State in the snow last year up front and all of that. I think Michigan's a good team, but I think that the motivation for Ohio State will be there, and Ohio State's got a new defensive coordinator, and if they can just get their defense to be a little more solid, that, you know, they're obviously going to be really good. And then Michigan lost their offensive and defensive coordinators, so there's no way I believe Michigan is going to be exactly the same, you know, as they were. And then what else did I have? You know, Notre Dame. How do I think Notre Dame's going to do? You know, I think Notre Dame had a lot of young guys on their offensive line. So if that is actually really good this year, then I think they'll have a pretty good team. But because the problem with Ohio State last year was they could get pushed around. They got pushed around by Oregon and they got pushed around by Michigan. You know, Can Notre Dame's offensive line push Ohio State around a little bit? Because if they can, then maybe Notre Dame has a shot in that game. But yeah, we're going to find out. I mean, you know, the thing is, if, you know, Notre Dame's got to, you know, keep the game in front of them, ball control, you know, run it as best they can, and try to keep the game in front of them, because they can't get into a knockout contest with Ohio State. They'll get blown out. So they have to try to keep the game in front of them, and maybe they can do it. You know, maybe in the first game, because Ohio State, you know, early in the season, sometimes they struggle. You know, they had a tough game against.
They lost to Oregon last year at the beginning of the season.
Then they played Tulsa the week after that and struggled with them. So you know, maybe they can catch them off guard. But, you know, I think Ohio State's going to be so ticked off about what happened last year and how they should have been in the playoff and didn't make it, that I think it's just a motivation thing. They're going to be really tough. And you know, I think Notre Dame will be good. I don't think they're going to make the playoff, because I don't think they're going to beat Ohio State, and I think they're probably going to lose to Clemson too. So, but I think they could have a really good year, and I think that you from what I was reading here, it sounds like Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame's coach, he's listed as a player's coach, apparently is what people are saying. And we've had a lot of instances where that doesn't work. A lot of times that falls apart, especially in college. So we'll see how it goes. I actually think he's going to be pretty good. I think they're, a lot of schools wanted him, and I think Notre Dame may have something with this guy. But the problem with Notre Dame is, as always, they're kind of spoiled. They think they should be fantastic, and Brian Kelly has basically, completely ruined their outlook because now they think every coach is going to be Brian Kelly, and it's not going to happen.
Well, speaking of him, what's your outlook for LSU?
I think LSU could win 8 or 9 games.
Okay.
They're not ready to compete with the best teams. And he's also got to figure out, he's got 2 quarterbacks. They haven't figured out which one they're really gonna be the guy yet. But I think this will be a good year and a good lead in to the year after. I think they'll be better with him this year than they were last year. I know that's not saying a lot. LSU wasn't great last year, but I do think they're going to be good, but I don't think, they're not going to really be competitive as far as the SEC goes. I don't expect them to beat Alabama. I don't think they're playing Georgia, but I don't expect them to beat Texas A&M either.
Right.
So, and they have, their schedule is tough. They've got to play, on the road. They got to play Mississippi State, South Carolina, Auburn, and then they've got to play Arkansas and Ole Miss. So it's going to be tough for A&M to make the playoff. But they have a shot. They got to beat. They're going to have to win almost every game. But they definitely have a shot. Yeah. So. I'm not going to get into Heisman talk. I really don't care. I really don't care who wins the Heisman. But yeah, I think this could be a really interesting season, especially if we only get one SEC team, like I think is going to happen. It could open the door for some teams to make it that don't usually get in there. We might have, we could have a Pac-12 team in there. You never know.
Right. Which would be good for variety,
Yeah, absolutely. I still don't think anybody's going to beat Alabama. I think Ohio State has the best chance. Like if you're asking me to handicap it, I think Ohio State has the best. They've got the best shot to win the whole thing. But yeah, that's really I'm trying to think of any other topics college football wise, but no, not really. Yeah, this page I'm looking at has Baylor making the playoff, so seems like a lot of people like them.
Yeah. All right.
But anyway, yeah, looking forward to the season. I've got my playoff. I've got Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and Utah. So that's who I'm picking to make it.
You said Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Utah?
Yep.
Yeah, Bama, Clemson, Ohio State. That sounds about right. Because they pretty much, if you look back to the history of the playoff, it's like they're in there pretty much every year.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I think Ohio State has a good shot to go undefeated. I think Clemson does also. Alabama, they tend to trip up in one game here or there, so we'll see. I think they play Ole Miss right after they play LSU, so that could be a bit of a
Where do they
trap.
play LSU?
LSU that's a home game, I think.
That's in Tuscaloosa.
No, Bama is playing at LSU and at Ole Miss back to back.
Wow. Okay.
So
that could be
those
an
are
interesting stretch.
right. Could be interesting road games. But they have basically the rest of them at home. They play at Tennessee, but yeah, so that could be a stretch where they could definitely, trip up. And Ohio State has basically all their good teams at home. The only road they play at Penn State, but that's it. They get Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Iowa, and Michigan all at home. So that seems like it lines up for them pretty well.
Yeah.
Another game that I didn't mention, Utah is playing at Florida the first week in Gainesville. So I don't think
Okay.
I don't think Florida's supposed to be very good. But as far as an out of conference game that could be interesting, that could be one of them. So.
Yeah.
But all right, good. But yeah, next weekend games. A lot of games start on Thursday, and then we got games on Saturday, Sunday, and on Labor Day.
All right.
So should be a good first legit weekend of college football.
Right. We were talking about I guess we can talk about the Lakers thing. So there's a series on Hulu. I don't remember the name of it, but it's a documentary basically about the Lakers.
Right.
Starting with when Jerry Buss bought the team, and throughout. I guess it's going to go up to present day because I keep seeing clips of, obviously the Magic Johnson, Kareem era, but also Kobe, Shaq, and even LeBron. So we'll see. But it's pretty good. It's a documentary. They have old interviews with Jerry Buss because obviously he passed away a few years ago. But they have newer interviews with Jeannie Buss and Jerry Buss's kids, and who obviously been involved with the franchise a lot over the years. And then newer interviews with Kareem and Magic and Michael Cooper and Byron Scott and Pat Riley and all those people. So they've had 3 episodes so far. So it's a pretty decent series. I mean, again, if you're like us, then we've seen throughout the years. They did like a 30 for 30 sort of thing on the Lakers Celtics finals. Matchups in the 80s. So we've seen that, and even before that, I've seen a bunch of stuff about Larry Bird and about Magic Johnson in the 80s. So it's not necessarily. They do cover some stuff that I hadn't really heard before. They're kind of getting into more detail about Jerry Buss owning the team and buying the team and the whole thing with trying to hire a coach and the finances with all that and the Laker girls and just turning the Lakers into a whole phenomenon.
Yeah, so it's called Legacy: The True Story of the LA Lakers.
Right. Okay. But anyway, people should check it out. It's pretty good. But I did think the thing that kind of struck me as I'm watching it is, Jerry West was really critical of Winning Time, the show on HBO, and particularly for its portrayal of Jerry West. Now, that show does take a lot of liberties, and it's based on actual events, but it's very, I guess you could say, very loosely based on it. Although there were some things that in the first episode of this of Legacy where you're like, oh, okay, so that actually did happen, because they actually do have scenes in Winning Time where it's like that exact thing happens, and the players are like talking about it. So that's kind of interesting. But the thing that struck me was, I'm not necessarily a free speech absolutist anymore, but in some ways I kind of am, and that basically means that, if you don't like something, then talk about it or do your own thing. So if you didn't like the Winning Time show, then if Lakers didn't like it or Jerry West didn't like it, then do your own. And they've essentially done their own. I mean, the documentary isn't totally slanted toward praising the Lakers. I mean, it sort of is in parts, but it is pretty, it's kind of critical of a variety of different things. So, it's kind of one of those things where, like, more speech. If you don't like a particular thing, then do more speech, and you can kind of have your voice heard about what, well, this is what really happened, so.
Yeah, I think now it's gotten to the point where athletes and teams are now using documentaries to try to portray a certain thing. Yeah. And, this goes back, I mean, it's a bigger topic, but this goes back to me to the Last Dance with Michael Jordan. Right. Where we had gone into the, basically that the idea for that documentary was they had footage of the last season, of the Bulls, and they had all of this stuff, and they could put it all together so you could see all this inside stuff that we had never seen before. That was the impetus for the documentary. You could have done that in like 2 episodes, but they chose to expand it out and do the whole history of Michael Jordan and the Bulls in 10 episodes. And, it was, I get, like, if you don't know all these stories and you're not really a, huge sports fan, I get why they had to do it. But at the same time, I knew a lot of that stuff, and the way it was done was, it was done with a big slant towards Michael Jordan's the best ever. And, right. Michael Jordan did no wrong. and all of this stuff, and they didn't talk about his wife. They didn't talk about the palimony suit when he was in Washington. They made Phil Jackson look like a saint, and, I've got news. Phil Jackson was anything but. He had his issues too. It was not as simple as he just brought them together. So, and then, the winning time thing comes out, and that's, like I've stated before, that's basically a cartoon. That's just basically insane. So now, everybody's trying to prove themselves. They did a Magic documentary on Apple Plus.
Okay.
But that being said, it doesn't mean these products aren't good. I think documentaries now are awesome. Like I've been kind of going through the 30 for 30 documentaries on ESPN, from 2009, 2010 is when they first came out. And let me tell you something, in 10 years, documentaries are they're so much better now, and it's even, they were good then, but now it's at a whole other level at this point. So, that being said, I'm sure I'd like to check it out. Any of those sports documentary things, I find them really fascinating. So,
yeah. The other Lakers thing, I guess, was sort of a ridiculous take of the week. I mean, the Lakers, I guess, made a trade for Patrick Beverley.
Right.
They still have Russell Westbrook on the roster, which it seems like he's there for the time being. But I just thought it was funny. Colin Cowherd's talking about this trade. He's like, oh, well, you got LeBron and Anthony Davis and Patrick Beverley. And, Anthony Davis is a really good defender. And LeBron, in spots can be a good defender. And, Patrick Beverley. And I'm just like, he's like, yeah, I think you really got something there. And I'm listening to this. I'm going, wait a minute. How old is Patrick Beverley? Then I looked it up. He's like 34. I'm like, at this point, he's almost like a borderline NBA player. I mean, he has to he's an agitator. And the thing is, it's like, oh, I'm getting like Dennis Rodman, Draymond Green vibes. Hold on. Okay. Dennis Rodman's a Hall of Famer who's the greatest rebounder we've ever seen. Okay. At his size, and then Draymond Green is he's a fulcrum of an offense. Okay, he's a great passer. He's not really a threat to score by shooting threes, but I mean he can get to the basket and stuff. Patrick Beverley, he's an okay 3-point shooter, but he's just kind of an agitator at this point, which is fine. Sometimes teams really need a guy like that, but I'm not making a big thing out of this. Like what?
Yeah, certainly Patrick Beverley is not changing anybody's fortune. And, I don't think Russell Westbrook is going to, be on the team. And if he happens to be on the team, I don't think he'll be playing. So I think this is all kind of a moot point. It's Lakers stuff, run amok. And if that trade is really out there where they could get Buddy Hield, Miles Turner for Westbrook and they haven't done it, then I don't even know what to say. That means that trade's not real, because if it was, they'd be foolish not to have already made that move. I don't think anybody wants Westbrook anyway. But anyway, speaking of NBA stuff, did we talk about Kevin Durant staying in Brooklyn on the last podcast? I think maybe we did.
Yeah, we did. Right? Wait, when did
I think so. I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, we should probably know what's going on our own podcast, but whatever. We talk about a lot of stuff. So yeah, I think it's kind of cool that Brooklyn kind of said, yeah, we're not doing it, but part of what I guess what I would add to it is, I don't know that I really think Kevin Durant was steadfast in any direction. I don't think Kevin Durant is one of these guys who makes a decision and goes, this is what I'm doing. I don't care what anybody else says. I'm doing it anyway. I don't get that feeling. I feel like he just gets easily influenced and kind of sways whatever way he happens to feel in the moment.
Yeah. Well, and the thing, I guess because I believe we did talk about this, but the other point that I kind of wanted to make was Jason Timpf on Hoops Tonight was talking about this, and he was surprised that they didn't end up trading him. And he's like, well, now you've got all this bad blood between Durant and I'm just thinking, hold on, okay? Kyrie could have had an extension if he had agreed to some incentives because, he hasn't been playing fucking basketball, that's what he's paid to do. Okay. So it's like, so they did offer him an extension, which I guess wasn't good enough for him. So you're critical of that? And then you're saying you want to trade. Well, they can't find a good trade partner. It's like, oh, well, he wanted to trade. Now he's going to be there and be unhappy. And Kyrie Irving's going to be unhappy. It's like, I mean, okay. And then he was, I guess his point was, well, you could have made a trade and gotten some first round picks. And I'm just like, slow down. This is not the NFL. Okay. First round picks, they might be valuable. I mean, it kind of depends where they are, because once you get outside the top 10 or 15 players in the draft, it's kind of a crapshoot. I mean, and to be honest, within the first 15 picks, it can be kind of a crapshoot unless you have one of those guys who just like, I clearly know this guy's going to be really good. So the idea that it's like, well, just get rid of it and start over. If you start over, you're not going to be very good. Okay? And if you're Sean Marks and Steve Nash, if you want to keep your jobs, you need to win now. And the best way for them to win now is Durant and Kyrie Irving playing basketball.
Right.
And getting something from Ben Simmons. And they brought in some shooters in the offseason. They get Joe Harris back. Like, look, they could be like, if Kevin Durant and Kyrie are playing, they'll probably have a high seed in the Eastern Conference. I don't think they'll win the championship, but that's their best chance to be good. So, like, oh, we're just going to start over and lose for 2 years? Like,
yeah, obviously the Brooklyn Nets organization agrees with you, because they didn't want to start over. They made that pretty clear. But yeah,
there was not a great deal to be had out there. There wasn't, from what's been reported. There was not a great deal out there.
All right, and shout out to Ryan Russillo. Just play in the basketball games. Like, I don't know how many other ways I can say it. Just play. That's all you got to do. Just play basketball. Play for the contract that you signed. So yeah, this is going to be it's going to be quite fascinating with that team every day. I'm sure that every sports network will have a reporter assigned to them every single day. So it'll be quite, it's going to be really weird. That should be the motto. The Brooklyn Nets theme this year should be, let's get weird.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I mean, look, if part of, I guess one of the main things is that he's got 4 years on his contract. Durant has 4 years on his contract. If he had 1 year left, he probably would have gotten traded. I would lean more in that direction, but because he's got 4 years, it's like, well, we don't necessarily have to trade him, and we're not getting a really awesome deal because there isn't a really awesome deal out there. So
right, yeah, I think Kyrie Irving stays there. I think I don't think they would trade Kyrie unless Durant was leaving, and right now it looks like that he's staying. I don't know how, and we don't even know how much he really wanted to be traded. But anyway, we'll move on from that. So, what did you? Anything else before we finish up?
Let's see. Well, I didn't write down a rant, but I did have somewhat of a rant as we're coming up on football season. So, I'm not saying that people shouldn't watch football. Obviously, we're a sports podcast. I'm going to watch football this year. You're going to watch football this year. A lot of people are. Okay, college and pro football, we're going to watch a lot of it. Okay, that's fine. But there's a football obsession or addiction, I don't know, whatever word you want to use, that we've got in this country, and it's kind of at the point where it's a little ridiculous, and I think we need to pull back just a little bit, okay? When I see TV ratings for preseason games, and I'm like, dude, there's nothing, like, seriously, this is the golden age of content right now, and you can't, I'm not watching preseason games, okay? You shouldn't be watching the Pro Bowl. Don't watch the Pro Bowl. Come on, And then some of these Monday night games, if it's a bad matchup, you don't really need to. I mean, I guess some people are watching it because they're gambling on it, but, really? Just don't gamble on every game. Some of these games you really shouldn't gamble on because you're probably going to lose. And second of all, do you really want to gamble on a game that's just boring to watch? I mean, granted, gambling makes it more fun. So does fantasy football. But again, I'm not saying don't watch it, but I'm just saying we've just become highly addicted to this, and it's kind of ridiculous. Like, we can talk about other topics, we can talk about other sports a little bit here and there. You know, we don't have to talk about it all the time. It's like we've been talking about with Jimmy Garoppolo and Baker Mayfield. That's not that interesting. We could talk about something else. We could talk about, you know, upcoming game, or we could talk about, you know, during the season. Obviously, we can talk about games that actually happen, or we can talk about team predictions on other teams that we think are going to be really good. You know, why do we have to constantly do this thing where we're going to talk about this and this, and we're going to talk about the Cowboys, even though we know the Cowboys aren't going to be that good this year? So, like, this all just sort of highlights this football obsession we have. So I'm just sort of, it's a plea to people, just pull back a little bit. You know, talk to your wife every now and then. Just, you know, spend some time with your children, okay? Go outside, all right? Just, you can still watch football and you can still do some other stuff, okay? That's basically what I'm saying.
So your take, Clark, on our sports podcast is watch less sports?
No. I'm just saying, you know, football we've become a little obsessed with, and everybody knows it's gotten a little ridiculous. Like, let's just, come on, just pull back a little. Don't watch the NFL draft and start booing players who you've probably never seen play. I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, what I have to say about that is, I don't know. I mean, is it crazy? I mean, in Europe or in England, when the Premier League is playing on Saturday and Sunday, like, people are out of their minds insane about it, and it's a lot more people than are watching the games here. So, because they've got
maybe that's a good point. Maybe it's a little bit of an overreaction.
But I do think, it does. It does worry me a little bit when people are watching meaningless games. Like, regular season games, I get it, but the preseason games and the Pro Bowl and it's pretty insane.
People watch the Combine. I mean, come on. You can watch, if you want to watch competitive running, you know, they have track and field at the Olympics, and they have different events you can actually watch where people are, I mean, like, come on. I don't need to see a guy running around how fast did he run in 40 yards, you know, just. But
yeah, I think the gambling has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm being naive, but I just, like, now that gambling's legal in a bunch of places, and you listen to these different podcasts and stuff, and people keep talking about it, and I'm like, I just bet on this, and I bet on this, and I bet on this, and I'm just like, dude, are there just a lot of people that have a gambling problem now that's been exposed, now that it's become legal? Like, I mean, maybe they do. I don't know, but I'm just kind of like, all right. Geez.
It's a major industry. It's a huge, gigantic industry at this point. But yeah, I do think we have gone a little overboard, and I totally agree with you. Have a conversation with your wife. Have a conversation with your kids. You know, make sure you put in the family time, folks. Make sure you're connecting with somebody other than, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman and Al Michaels when you're watching games, But it's a little public service announcement for you.
Well, that's like, that reminds me of Jeff Foxworthy had a bit about he's like, I think they should splice in marital tips into, like, sports broadcasts, So, like, and he's talking about, like, he was watching an Atlanta Braves game, I guess this would have been in the 90s, and he's like, and Greg Maddux with the pitch, and it's just a bit outside. And by the way, a great gift for Mother's Day, for your wife's birthday is this, And then he's like, he made this joke about how, like, people will hear it, but they won't totally get it. And he's like sitting there watching the game and goes, "Hey, honey, did I ever tell you you're as pretty as Greg Maddux?"
Yeah, it's crazy. And plus there's a growing population of women who watch football too. So it's not even,
but they don't get, for the most part, they don't get nearly as obsessed as men do.
Yeah.
I would venture to guess.
Now you're generalizing, I think, I definitely think, we've talked about this a million times. I definitely think when it gets to the point where, that's why it's kind of nice this Deshaun Watson thing happened. obviously not to any of those women, but it's nice that, we can see the fans are like, they're not happy with this at all, which is good. It means, they still have, they haven't completely lost their moral compass, but if Deshaun Watson wins games, the Browns fans will be cheering like crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's all we got for today, folks. Next week we'll preview the NFL. Make sure, I will be tuning into some college football games this weekend. So everybody have a good one. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and have a great one.